Chauvin was found guilty on all three counts. And my perspective has always been that the situation is really a lose-lose for, Black, racialized, oppressed, and poor folks. Because on the one hand, if he had been exonerated, then of course that means that, that would sort of empower more cops to kill Black people on camera without impunity, right? But on the other hand, with this conviction, it still presents a particular problem because a lot of white folks, a lot of liberals are breathing a sigh of release. And to them, this actually is justice as opposed to essentially retribution, right? And so in their mind, we no longer have a reason to protest. We no longer have a reason to be in the streets. But of course, as we know, there's always a reason to protest, to be in the streets, and to be organizing and mobilizing for justice. And so in their mind, because we will remain in the streets, then that rationalizes or legitimates violence against protesters, right? Whether by police forces or by National Guards. In fact, we're seeing that happening right now with the the Dante Wright protests that are happening just a few miles away from where the Chauvin trial was being held. And of course, I do think that had an influence on the outcome of the trial. And then the other thing, too, is that they're saying that there's grounds for appeal for this guilty verdict because Maxine Waters encouraged people to stay in the streets or to increase the pressure if he were found innocent. And so even though juries are supposed to be sequestered, somehow this ostensibly might have had an impact on the verdict. So, and the other thing too is, Nancy Pelosi and her infinite wisdom made a statement today that, thanking George Floyd for his sacrifice for justice, right? And that now his name is synonymous with justice. And so, my response to this is that is peak celebration of anti-Black death in the service of liberal fantasy. She might as well have thanked Chauvin for murdering him because it was the murder that brought people out into the streets that really compelled this verdict. And so to me, it just symbolizes is just a manifestation of how there really is no justice in a sort of criminal punishment system set up to protect and facilitate a racial capitalist, settler colonial, imperial society. And so, the question is where does that leave us? If it is that the justice system has been fundamentally set up against us, what are we to make of these sorts of really show trials, right? So that's some of my initial thoughts.